600 master stove builders serve Austria, a country the size of Wisconsin. 50 serve the United States. Same technology, same physics, same 700-year engineering lineage. One country remembers, the other was made to forget. There is a heating system that captures 80 to 90% of a fire's heat, while your metal wood stove loses most of it up the chimney. One fire, 2 hours of burning, 24 hours of radiant warmth, no electricity, no thermostat, no fan. In 1822, an experimenter lit a 3.5-hour fire beneath a Polish castle. 6 days later, the floor vents were still releasing air at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Finland installs this system in 90% of new homes. The EPA exempted it from emissions certification because it already burns cleaner than their standards require. And in America, you have almost certainly never heard of it. In 1988, the EPA required factory certification for wood heaters. A system that must be custom built by a mason on site cannot be factory certified. The cleanest wood burning technology ever developed was not banned. It was designed out of existence by paperwork. It is called the Masonry Heater, the Kachelofen, the Russian stove, the brick lung. This is not a story about a technology that failed. This is a story about a technology that succeeded without generating revenue. Welcome to Off-Grid Secrets. The archive opens in 1822 in the banqueting hall beneath Malbork Castle, Poland. This is the largest brick castle in the world, built by the Teutonic Knights in the 13th century, when the Baltic winters could kill a man in hours. Beneath the great refectory lies a chamber most visitors never see, a furnace vault, granite stones stacked above it, and a network of floor vents that have not been used in centuries. An experimenter arrives with a simple question. He carries 0.7 cubic meters of spruce, a stack small enough for one man to lift. He lights a fire. The burn lasts 3.5 hours. Then he waits. 1 day passes. The floor vents still release warm air. 3 days. Still warm. 6 days later, air flows from the medieval stone at 46 degrees Celsius, 115 Fahrenheit. The fire died nearly a week ago. 6 days, one fire. The stone remembers, no bellows, no fans, no machinery, just physics that predates electricity by 2,000 years, working exactly as the Knights had designed it. But Malbork was not the beginning. It was one data point in a 700-year experiment, conducted across an entire continent. The scene shifts to Sweden, 1767. The forests are vanishing. Deforestation has stripped the timber that once seemed endless, and the nation faces a crisis it has never known, not enough wood to survive winter. The king commissions 2 men to solve the problem. Architect Carl Johan Kronstedt, Field Marshal Fabian Breda. Their task, redesign the Swedish tile stove to burn less wood. Kronstedt's innovation was counterintuitive. Instead of letting hot gases rush straight up the chimney, carrying most of the heat with them, he forced them downward, against their own buoyancy, through 5 internal flue channels that wound through the masonry mass before escaping. The result was a stove 8 times more efficient than the standard. 8 times, same fire, same room, 8 times the heat retained. That design is still functionally unchanged 259 years later. You can find original kakelugnar standing in Swedish castles today, at Gripsholm, at Sturehof, at the Svindersvik summer house near Stockholm. They still work, and across the border, in the coldest inhabited region on Earth, Russian engineers took the idea even further. The Truska Pech, the Russian stove, occupied up to 1/3 of a peasant's home. It was not merely a heater, it was a baking oven, a cooking surface, a water heater, and on top, a sleeping platform called the Lezhanka. Picture this: Siberian winter, 40 degrees below zero outside. Inside, a family sleeps on top of their stove. The masonry mass beneath them holds 77 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit through the night. No electricity, no thermostat, just tons of brick releasing the heat of yesterday's fire. Families slept on their heater. Children grew up with the warmth of stone beneath them. Peter the Great understood what this meant. His 1718 decree banned smoky stoves, lacking proper chimneys in St. Petersburg and Moscow. His December 10, 1722 decree mandated chimney cleaning schedules and stove placement away from walls. The Tsar treated this technology as infrastructure, not furniture. By the late 18th century, Russian scientists Nikolai Lvov and Ivan Ivanovich Svyazov had published the mathematics of stove design, Russian pyrostatics, theoretical foundations of stove art. They calculated chimney sizes, gas channel cross-sections, optimal mass ratios. This was not folk wisdom, this was engineering. In the Alpine regions, they perfected the aesthetic. The oldest existing tile stove in a style still practiced today stands in the Landesfürstlicherberg, the Electoral Prince's residence in Meran, South Tyrol, 15th century. The ceramic tiles are called Kacheln, and the stove built from them is the Kachelofen. The builders are called Hafnermeister, master stove makers, a licensed trade. A guild system 500 years old. In Austria alone, 600 registered stove building enterprises serve a country the size of Wisconsin. 600 in Wisconsin-sized Austria. This was not a regional quirk. From Poland to Finland to Russia to Austria, every northern European civilization arrived at the same answer: store heat in mass. Release it slowly, one fire, one day. The physics was universal, and when modern researchers finally measured what medieval masons had built by instinct, they discovered something that should have been impossible. Norbert Senf never planned to become North America's leading authority on masonry heaters. Born in Toronto, he completed 3 years of mechanical engineering at the University of Toronto before moving to rural Quebec in the 1970s with his wife Layla. They lived off-grid. His father was a mason. In 1981, he attended a workshop in Maine where Finnish architect Heikki Hyttinen taught North American novices how to build what Europe had known for centuries. Senf became obsessed. He co-founded Lopez Labs in Shawville, Quebec, now North America's largest database of masonry heater performance tests, operating since 1992. He served as president of the Masonry Heater Association. He spent 10 years helping write the ASTM standard that would give masonry heaters a pathway into American building codes. And when he tested the combustion, he found what should not have been possible. For every kilogram of wood burned, the masonry heater released only 1.4 to 5.8 grams of particulate matter. An old wood stove releases 50 to 100 grams. The emissions ratio between complete and incomplete combustion, Senf documented, can be as high as 100 to 1. 100 to 1. The masonry heater forces complete combustion. A conventional stove does not. Here's why. The masonry heater is not a stove. It is a lung made of brick. Your metal wood stove heats fast and forgets faster. The fire burns at 800 degrees. The gases rush up the chimney at 600. Most of that heat vanishes in an hour. You feed it again and again. 6 to 8 cords of wood per season, and your house is still cold by morning. The masonry heater does something different. You light a fire hot and fast, 1500 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the flames roar for 2 hours. The sound is distinctive, a deep, rushing roar, flames so complete they are nearly transparent. The gases rise and strike a refractory capping slab at the top of the firebox. They cannot escape upward. They are forced down against their own buoyancy through a maze of channels flanking the firebox, 3 to 9 meters of pathway. The gases travel through this labyrinth, surrendering heat to the surrounding masonry with every turn. By the time they reach the chimney, they have cooled from 1800 degrees to 300. The walls have absorbed the difference, the fire dies, the damper closes, and the mass 2 to 6 tons of brick and stone begins to radiate. Surface temperature, 155 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough to lean against, cool enough never to burn. For 24 hours, no fan, no thermostat, no electricity, no moving parts, no maintenance. Recurred, Dr. Hermann Hofbauer at the Austrian Stovemasons Guild Testing Laboratory conducted the most comprehensive field study ever performed. In 1991, he tested 34 Grundofen heaters across Austria. Efficiencies ranged from 61 to 94%. Most clustered between 75 and 90. Let me be precise here because the numbers matter. The 90% figure you may have heard is combustion efficiency. How much of the wood's chemical energy is released during burning? That number is real, 88 to 98%. But overall thermal efficiency, heat actually delivered to the living space, runs 65 to 85%. Senf himself stated in 2008, claiming efficiencies of 90% for masonry heaters is exaggerated. 65 to 85%. Still double an open fireplace, still 40% better than a conventional wood stove. Still the most efficient wood burning technology ever developed. The cost arithmetic tells the rest of the story. Annual heating for a 2,000 square foot home. A masonry heater costs roughly $560 in wood, 3 to 4 cords. Natural gas costs $1,520. Fuel oil, $3,120. Propane, $3,460. Electric baseboard, $3,680. 560 versus 3,680. Same house, same winter, different physics. Dan Crosby of New Hampshire documented 17 years of ownership. $27,100 total. Installation, fuel, maintenance versus an estimated $39,700 for oil heat. Savings, $12,600. And the heater is still running. The physics worked, the economics worked. The technology had been proven for 7 centuries across an entire continent. So why, in a country of 330 million people, are there fewer than 50 professional masonry heater builders? The barrier was not physics, it was paperwork. On February 26, 1988, the Environmental Protection Agency promulgated the new source performance standards, 40 CFR Part 60, Subpart AAA. All new residential wood heaters now required factory certification. Manufacturers had to prove emissions compliance through laboratory testing. Cost, roughly $50,000 per model. The regulation made sense for factory-built stoves. Test one unit from the production line, certify the design, apply the label to every identical unit that follows. But a masonry heater cannot be factory built. Each one is custom designed for its site, custom built by a mason. There is no production line. There is no identical unit. There is no model to certify. The EPA recognized this. Masonry heaters were exempted. Their mass exceeded 800 kilograms, the threshold for regulation, and they burned too cleanly to need oversight. When the EPA proposed Subpart RRRR in 2014 to create separate standards for masonry heaters, the agency found that masonry heaters already met the limits they were trying to impose. The rule was never finalized. Too clean to regulate, too clean to certify, too clean to sell. The exemption should have been a victory. It became a cage. Without EPA certification, insurers did not know how to evaluate safety. One homeowner documented the conversation on hearth.com. Spoke to my agent and she said, unless it is designed, certified, built, and installed by a licensed professional, it would void your policy. The real issue is they want UL listing. Without a UL listing, building officials defaulted to demanding listed and labeled equipment, a requirement structurally impossible for site-built appliances to meet. Without a recognized category, appraisers could not value the investment. FHA appraisal rules, HUD 4000.1, require heating systems to operate without human intervention for extended periods. A masonry heater requires manual loading 1 to 2 times daily. This requirement can disqualify it as a primary heating system for mortgage purposes. $15,000 to $30,000 of investment. No checkbox on the appraisal form. The exemption, intended as recognition, became the reason downstream gatekeepers refused to recognize it. The Masonry Heater Association fought back. They spent 10 years developing ASTM E1602, the standard guide for construction of solid fuel burning masonry heaters. Tom Stroud, former MHA president, chaired the original ASTM task group. The International Residential Code Section R1002 and International Building Code Section 2112 now contain dedicated masonry heater provisions. The IBC was the first model building code in North America to include masonry heater language, a hard-won foothold. But the fight was not against physics, it was against the system. At an October 15, 1999 meeting in Washington, D.C., the Hearth Products Association Masonry Heater Manufacturers Caucus threatened to request disallowal of existing IBC masonry heater language unless the MHA agreed to weaker clearance standards. CENF documented the confrontation. The manufacturers were recently successful in getting MHA proposed language defeated in the new International Residential Code. The people who made factory stoves did not want competition from masons. They designed a certification system that can only approve things built in factories. They required UL listing for equipment that must be built on site. They created an appraisal structure that penalizes heating systems requiring human attention. They wrote insurance guidelines that default to denial when the EPA stamp is missing. They built a licensing infrastructure with no category for the mason. No state or federal license exists for masonry heater building. They did not ban the masonry heater, they simply made it invisible. And behind the paperwork, there is always a market. The American Gas Association reported revenue of $36 million in 2019 and spent $1.23 million on federal lobbying in 2024 alone. The Hearth, Patio, and Barbecue Association runs a government affairs leadership academy, training members to influence policymakers. The US HVAC market is estimated at $25 to $30 billion. Approximately 60 million gas-heated American homes generate an estimated $42 to $72 billion in annual revenue for gas utilities. A masonry heater lasts 50 to 100 years. A gas furnace lasts 15 to 20. A masonry heater burns 3 to 5 cords of wood per season, often free or locally sourced. A gas furnace requires monthly utility bills. A masonry heater cannot be metered, cannot be serviced under warranty, cannot be replaced on a 15-year cycle. It is not a product. It is a threat to products. Let me be clear about what the evidence does and does not show. There is no documented case of direct targeted industry lobbying specifically against masonry heaters. The suppression is systemic, not conspiratorial. A site-built custom permanent heating system that lasts a century and requires no fuel purchases from utilities simply does not fit into a regulatory and commercial system built around factory-manufactured, certifiable, replaceable products. The system does not suppress this technology through malice. It simply cannot see it. But the technology did not disappear. In a rented lodge in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a handful of masons gather every spring to keep it alive. Each spring, the Masonry Heater Association gathers at Wild Acres Retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, near Little Switzerland. The cost is $750 to $795, including accommodations and 3 meals per day. The attendees come from everywhere: the United States, Canada, Argentina, Ireland, France, the Czech Republic, Denmark. They spend a week building full-size masonry heaters, bake ovens, and cook stoves by hand. The 2009 auction raised $23,464 for the organization. MHA certification requires a hands-on test, building a 2-foot chimney section within a time limit, judged for plumb, level, and quality. As of recent counts, approximately 13 certified heater masons are active, with more in the pipeline, 13 for a continent. Albert Albee Barden of Norridgewock, Maine, has been called the guru of stove masons in North America. In 1978, he and his wife Cheryl traveled through Europe and Scandinavia with their infant son Scott on their backs, researching masonry heater traditions. In Finland, they found what America had forgotten: a vibrant tradition of red brick cook stoves, masonry heaters, and ovens. A 1979 return trip established a lifetime partnership with Finnish castings company Narvioi and a friendship with researcher Heikki Hutiainen. Together, they co-authored Finnish Fireplaces, Heart of the Home. Barden organized the first hands-on Finnish fireplace construction workshop in North America. About 16 masons attended. He has since built hundreds of heaters across the United States and as far as New Zealand. He developed the patented Albee core system. He partnered with Le Pagnol, French wood-fired oven makers, since 1840. When asked why he devoted his life to this technology, Barden said, "I tell people I felt a hand come down on my shoulder and kind of push me. In theological training, you hear about callings. I knew this was what wood heat really needed to be." His son, Scott, now heats a 5,000 square foot home with only 2.5 cords of wood per year. 2.5 cords, 5,000 square feet. The math does not lie. The contrast with Europe is devastating. Finland installs masonry heaters in an estimated 90% of new homes. Government tax incentives reduce demand for electricity, oil, and gas. Tuulikivi Corporation is founded in 1980 by Reijo and Elisa Valkonen in Juka, Finland, is publicly traded, $46.9 million in sales, products in 18 countries, over 300,000 homes heated worldwide. Austria has 600 registered stove building enterprises. The Kachelofen operates the VFIC, the world's only research center dedicated exclusively to Kachelofen technology. Austria developed the first European standard for one-off tiled stoves and chairs the European Standards Committee. 600 builders in Wisconsin-sized Austria, 50 in continent-sized America. Same physics, different memory, but the path exists even here. In Lacey, Washington, a homeowner replaced an unsafe 1970s fireplace insert with a custom-built masonry heater. Total cost? $5,200 in materials, plus $3,500 in education, MHA workshops, shadowing, masonry apprenticeship classes in Mount Lake Terrace, $8,700 total. The builder spent 2 years researching, attended MHA annual gatherings, shadowed master builder Jerry Frisch, on 3 projects. Permitted the heater through the City of Lacey with approval from Rod Tinamore, wood stove coordinator at the Washington Department of Ecology, 4 inspections by Jeff Cook of the City of Lacey, 9 months from start to first fire. Results: primary heat for 800 square feet, 1 to 2 cords per year, $200 to $400. Electric bill cut in half during heating season. The code pathway is IRCR 1002. The construction standard is ASTME 1602. The permit is real. The inspection's paced. It works. The masonry heater is not alone in this pattern. Rocket mass heaters operate on the same thermal mass principle, 80 to 90% less wood than conventional stoves. No UL or CSA certification exists. Portland, Oregon is a notable exception, thanks to the work of Ernie and Erica Wisner. Passive solar design can provide 20 to 90% of space heating through the orientation, glazing, and thermal mass. Edward Mazria's The Passive Solar Energy Book sold 500,000 copies in 1979. Cheap energy in the mid-1980s and Reagan-era cuts to federal solar research funding killed the movement. Building codes have never required solar orientation. Earth and construction, adobe, cob, rammed earth, demonstrates extraordinary longevity. Cob homes in Devon, England have stood 500 years. Taos Pueblo has been continuously inhabited for 1,000 years. Cob was only approved as IRC Appendix AU in October 2019 by a vote of 93 to 6. Most jurisdictions have not adopted it. Earth tubes exploit the Earth's stable underground temperature, 55 degrees at 10 feet depth, to pre-cool or preheat ventilation air. The concept dates to the Persian Empire, 550 BC. The design community calls them specialty niche type design projects. Thermal mass was coded out. Passive solar was appraised away. Earthen walls were excluded by materials lists. Building methods that eliminate bills are systematically invisible, not because they fail, but because they succeed without generating revenue. And still, the physics has not changed. They will not tell you that 600 master stove builders serve Austria, while 50 serve the United States. They will not tell you that the EPA exempted masonry heaters from certification because they already burned cleaner than the standards the agency was trying to enforce. They will not tell you that in 1822, a 3.5-hour fire beneath a Polish castle kept floor vents warm for 6 days. They will not tell you that a heating system lasting a century, burning a third of the wood, producing a tenth of the emissions, has no checkbox on your home appraisal. 700 years ago, the masons of Northern Europe built a machine to store fire and stone. It required no electricity, no thermostat, no subscription, one fire, 24 hours of warmth. The physics has not changed. The masonry heater is not waiting to be invented. It is waiting to be remembered beneath the paperwork, behind the codes, inside the stone that has always known how to hold heat and let it go slowly. The brick lung still breathes in Finnish villages, in Austrian farmhouses, in the hands of 50 American masons who refuse to let the knowledge die. A heating system you cannot meter, a material you cannot patent, engineering that asks for no warranty, no service contract, no 15-year replacement cycle. The technology does not need your permission. It only needs your attention. Every share rebuilds what they tried to bury. Every comment is a brick in the wall of memory. If this technology survives in North America, it will be because people like you refuse to let the physics be forgotten. Next time on Off-Grid Secrets, there is a cooling technique so simple it costs $14. A bucket of lime, a brush, a roof. In one afternoon, a builder in the American Southwest dropped his attic temperature by 40 degrees and nearly eliminated his need for air conditioning, the whitewash that the roofing industry priced out of existence.